thanks to his leadership, as well as the partnership and sacrifices made by over 60 members of an international coalition, we are making serious progress in pushing back ISIL out of Iraqi territory.
President Obama making nice, sitting beside the Iraqi Prime Minister earlier this week in the Iraqi Prime Minister's visit to the Oval Office. Welcome back to America's Forum with Miranda Khan, J.D. Hayworth. And the president, as you just heard, says he sees serious progress in the fight against ISIS in Iraq. But according to our troops on the ground there, the Iraqi military is in a state of disrepair.
The state of the military, of course, raises the question of whether our troops left too soon and if additional training will have more of an effect this time around.
Joining us for more on this story, retired Master Sergeant Scott Neal, a veteran of both Afghanistan and Iraq, and staying with us from Newsmax Washington, my old congressional colleague, the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the House, Pete Hoekstra. Scott, what's going on in Iraq? Why are the Iraqi troops and their equipment in a state of disrepair?
Well, I think we found out when we started to lead that we can train an individual soldier, we can teach them how to maneuver like a soldier, but what was really lacking was the sustainment part, the old tooth-to-tail mechanism of any sustainable army. And what's happening now, they're just degrading what they have now, and they don't have reserves or an ability to refit.
Yeah, Scott, I think what's happened here is if you're going to build a professional army, you have to build over time a culture of professionalism, excellence, integrity, and discipline. And I think, we taught people how to train and fire guns and other weapons and how to attack and, clear an area, but we never enabled them or helped them develop the correct culture. At least that's my take.
Well, certainly so. And what we see now out of the administration is this admiration for tactical successes when the rest of us are realizing the strategic failures. And until we address those over time and the great partnerships over time, all you will get is minor tactical successes out of the Iraqis.
Scott, how effective do you think this new round of training will be?
Well, I think it'll reinvigorate the Iraqis' will. They've seen the total carnage of ISIS. They know, hopefully, and understand that they need to defend themselves. So hopefully once they gain a success, how do you get them to refit and then march forward? If not, they're just going to fall backwards. They're going to have people going back home. They're only part-time paid soldiers at times, and it won't be sustainable.
Scott, during your time in Iraq, what did you see? Any type of training with the Iraqi troops? What impressions did you have when you were on the ground there?
Well, early on, we immediately started with the Special Forces, training with the Peshmerga, the Kurds up north. They were dedicated, they were loyal fighters. And that was all the way back in 2003, 2004 that led to the Iraqi commandos, the Iraqi counterterrorism forces. They became a very professional fighting force. But what we've seen since we've left is they basically, through political measures, gutted the leadership, marginalized those units, and today, those soldiers are just like me. They're 40, 50 years old, and the new generation hasn't stepped up.
Yeah, I think, JD, I don't know if you traveled to Iraq. I traveled to Iraq a number of different times, and, I met with, the cadets that were being trained for the police force, the military trainers that were training the future Iraqi soldiers. The soldiers and the police at the front lines, they were committed. But I think, and Scott, maybe you can give us an insight into this, once the Americans left, the leadership in the Army went back to its old tactics of corruption, buying influence and those kinds of things, which would just totally demoralize the frontline soldiers. Is that what's happened?
Well, that's exactly what happened. And a lot of the sustainment contracts for the Iraqi military, the support systems, the supply systems, everything, it sort of happened in Afghanistan too. The gaffe and the unprofessionalism of the commanders and the political pawns is what's gutted the Iraqi military.
Scott, we've heard reports of enemies basically infiltrating our military. What's being done to prevent this?
Well, the Iraqi military or the American military?
The Iraqi military, that we've heard spies coming in, people from various terrorist groups infiltrating our military, putting our men and women in harm's way.
Well, that's what happens. And, unique to special forces, we're always on guard for infiltration, and we can spot it, pretty easily. We use our own infiltrators to see the infiltrators. But what you see now is this desire to mass produce the Iraqi military again, and as the doors are wide open for infiltration, they come in, they go through the training, they actually identify who's left and right of them, and then they'll desert a day before graduation.
Let me ask, is there something we were ignoring in terms of the culture of Iraq, Shia versus Sunni, or tribal factions? Did we fail to understand culturally what was at stake in Iraq in trying to train up a military, Scott?
Well, I think we did. And it became a struggle early on where we could find the right tribes and the right militias to help support us. But in doing that, we started mass producing those relationships. And unfortunately, the American military in the junior commander levels were not sophisticated in understanding the history that they were involved in. We didn't have training education pipelines within our own command structure to understand the nuances of the Sunni Shiite rifts that were going on. And hence, we allowed too many to come forward.
And Scott, actually, if you take a look at what's going on in Iraq, there's tremendous fighting capability there against ISIL or ISIS, the Peshmerga, the Sunni tribes in the Iraqi army, but they're not coordinating. They're not working together. Isn't that correct?
Well, it certainly is, and that's when you lost the edge of operational, art, of strategic maneuver, of using your elements, strategic leadership. All these tactical successes, they erode. They're like tic-tac-toe, and nobody's helping the Iraqis or showing leadership to play chess in this certain situation.
Well, whether it's checkers, chess, whatever you want to call it, it's been mighty expensive in terms of blood and in terms of taxpayer dollars going into Iraq. Scott Neal, we do appreciate your perspective as someone who spent the time on the ground in both Iraq and in Afghanistan, and we thank you very much. Hey, time now for a Newsmax National Weather Update with Jessica Reyes.
Hey there, how's it going? I'm Jessica Reyes with your weather from coast to coast. We'll kick things off across the southwestern portion of the country where we're dealing with a high fire danger. Meanwhile, moving along into parts of San Antonio for today, into parts of Texas, we're dealing with a flash flooding, the threat of severe thunderstorms, so keeping a close eye on all of that. And speaking of flooding, a lot of that by the Gulf of Mexico, New Orleans in the eye of all of that, and so is Pensacola across northern portions of the state of Florida. Into central Florida for today, we may see some showers, but not so much the further south you go. If you're in Miami for today, you're dealing with some nice beach-like conditions. Across the northeast for today, high pressure dominates. With that said, lots of sun for us across the east, into the nation's capital, partly sunny, and into Boston, mainly sunny, great for an outdoor lunch. Here are some of your daytime highs.
And Jessica, closing out with those temperatures around the country, reminds me of the old days of radio when they talked about time and temperature. So Jessica provided the temperature.
Yes.
We've got news of some new times. Make a note, next week, America's Forum will air beginning at 11 a.m. in the east, 8 a.m. in the west, next week only. So make a note, put it right there on the refrigerator, 11 a.m. in the east for America's Forum, but if you're in Arizona, 8 a.m. There are some other schedule changes that we will announce next week, so come back with us and pay close attention when we tell you all about that. And there's more of America's Forum for today coming right up.